Incredible twist, girl sleeps on CEO's shoulder and awakens to surprising new life at a ranch. Lizzie had always envisioned her life in New York City as glamorous, vibrant, filled with creativity. But now, at 24, the reality was crushing. Sitting at a long table in the lavish conference room, her heart raced as she flipped through slides filled with marketing jargon, words pointless to the wealthy colleagues who sprawled in their seats, exchanging inside jokes and casting doubtful glances her way. As an intern at one of the top advertising agencies, she felt like an outsider, a lone soldier in a war she never signed up for. Each day, she braced herself against the waves of condescension from her affluent peers, each critique cutting deeper than the last. After a grueling presentation that ended in muted applause, exhaustion swept over her like a thick fog. Her eyelids grew heavy, her thoughts muddled by the stress and pressure to prove herself. Leaning against the frosted glass, she inadvertently collapsed onto the shoulder of Jack, the formidable and handsome CEO. His tailored suit felt foreign and intimidating, but in that moment, it became a sanctuary. When Lizzie awoke, she was no longer in the office. She blinked against the golden sunlight pouring through the expansive windows of a rustic ranch. Vibrant green field stretched endlessly before her. Confusion mingled with awe as Jack stood nearby, his hands casually resting on the fence that separated a grazing pasture from the homestead. "Welcome to my family's ranch," he said with an almost wistful tone. The contrast between the boardroom's sterile air and the ranch's raw beauty filled Lizzie with a sudden pulse of hope and possibility. Yet, lurking beneath the surface, her thoughts spiraled. She had escaped the harshness of her daily life only to stumble into the same insecurities. Jack shared his dreams of transforming the ranch into a community project aimed at mentoring local youth, but Lizzie felt her heart race with doubt. "Am I capable of this? What if I fail?" The whisper of her colleagues' laughter echoed in her ears. Before she could unravel her thoughts, Jack looked at her, his gaze piercing through her facade. "You have fresh ideas, I need someone like you." His faith felt like an anchor in the tumult torn by relentless self-doubt. But could she really step into the light after all those years of being underappreciated? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the project took form, Lizzie found herself entwined in a dizzying dance of ambition and fear. They discussed sustainable practices and community workshops, their laughter ringing through the otherwise tranquil pastures, yet an undercurrent of tension hummed in Lizzie's chest. She glimpsed a life she longed for, a purpose, a sense of belonging, but the skepticism from the agency clawed at her resolve. Just then, rumors began to swirl within the agency. Insidious whispers from a board member threatened to dismantle their vision. Lizzie's heart sank as doubts crept in, dredging up the familiar feeling of insignificance. What if they are right? What if this is just a foolish dream? Just as hope began to flourish, so did fear. Would she allow her voice to be drowned out once more? As the stakes rose, Lizzie stood at a crossroads, her trembling heart exploding with questions. Could she overcome this wave of doubt and defend their vision? In her moment of desperation, as she gazed into the horizon, all she could ask was whether she had the strength to confront not just her critics, but the doubts that had long defined her existence. And in that pivotal moment, the weight of expectation loomed large, hanging invisibly between her and the future they endeavored to build together. As the days unfolded under the expansive sky of the ranch, Lizzie felt the rhythm of ambition battling with fear like opposing forces within her. Jack's enthusiasm ignited a flicker of hope. Ideas began to flow in a way they never had among her former colleagues. She could almost taste the exhilaration of possibility, yet an incessant tide of doubt rolled in, threatening to trample her dreams before they even took root. Every morning, she found herself at the wooden table on the porch, papers strewn about, her pen racing over plans for the youth mentorship program. Each proposal took on a life of its own, resurrecting feelings of self-worth she thought she'd buried in the boardroom. Yet, each line written came with the shadow of question: was she truly equipped for this? The echo of her peers' cynicism loomed, a reminder of her past inadequacies. One afternoon, while sorting through ideas, Lizzie felt a prick of apprehension spiraling into outright anxiety. Jack's voice drummed in her mind, urging her to believe in herself. Yet, the nagging thought flickered: did he truly see her potential, or was he merely being kind? The phone call from the agency was a jarring distraction. A senior vice president had reached out, trying to pull her back into the fold, perhaps sensing an opportunity to disrupt her newfound path. "We miss your creative touches, Lizzie. You could come back and really shine with us," the voice intoned, dripping with insincerity. As she hung up the phone, the seed of internal conflict burrowed deeper. Part of her ached to return to the familiarity of her old life, where the structure and recognition kept her anchored. But the thought of relinquishing the chance to create something more meaningful formed a wall against that pull. Determination began to wrestle with doubt. She paced the wooden porch, the sunlight flickering through the trees, illuminating the vast fields that spread in all directions, mirroring the expanse of her potential. Maybe she could face the challenge of standing her ground against those who doubted her. Fueled by that sliver of resolve, she approached Jack the next day, her heart pounding in her chest. "I think I need to defend our project," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I won't let them undermine what we're building here." Jack's eyes lit up with approval, and for the first time, Lizzie felt a flicker of true courage rising within her. As they prepared for the meeting with the board, she couldn't shake the sense of impending confrontation. Would her voice carry the weight needed to stand up against the returns of her insecurities? The day arrived, and Lizzie stood before the board members, her confidence mingling with fear. As she began to speak, the memory of the empathic ranch, this new endeavor, surged within her. "This is more than just a project, it's a vision rooted in belief in our youth and their potential." But just as she felt that spark, a sneering voice from the back interrupted her. "And what makes you think you are qualified to speak on such matters, Lizzie?" The taunt ricocheted in the sterile room, igniting a fresh wave of self-doubt. In that moment, everything felt suspended in air: the critical eye of the snide board member, the faces of her colleagues, Jack's unwavering gaze. What she had previously craved as safety, now seemed suffocating. Could she rise against this direct challenge, not only for herself but to validate the vision she held so dearly? The outcome felt uncertain, but clarity pierced through. The moment had arrived to embrace conflict, not flee from it. Her next words would decide whether she would forge ahead or retreat back into doubt. With her heart drumming in her ears, Lizzie realized this wasn't merely about the ranch, it was about reclaiming the narrative of her life. The stakes had never been higher, and she knew one daring acknowledgement could change everything. Would she muster the courage to let her voice resonate, or would negativity silence her once again? The tension in the room thickened as Lizzie focused on the sneering voice that had dared to question her. Every heartbeat echoed in her ears, and time seemed to ripple as she gathered herself. How many times had she faced criticism in her career? The memories rushed back, cold glances from colleagues, the rattled confidence after too many meetings that felt like battles against her own shadow. But this was different. This was a chance for her to shift the narrative, to reclaim the control she felt had been stripped from her. "Why not me?" She spoke, her voice firmer than she anticipated, breaking through the chill of doubt. "I've spent years in corporate circles, watching how youth can be overlooked, dismissed. I've been that young voice." The words tumbled out with a clarity that surprised her. "I might not be a textbook expert on mentorship, but I know passion. I've witnessed talent wasted due to lack of guidance, something I can change." Silence met her declaration, and she could feel the eyes of the board members assessing her, weighing her sincerity against their preconceptions. The skeptical voice had momentarily lost its edge, but she sensed the weight of its return. Lizzie scanned the room, taking in the quiet anticipation. Their faces were hard to read, some intrigued, others indifferent. She glanced towards Jack, who gave her a subtle nod, an anchor amidst the storm. In that moment, a flicker of belief ignited within her. Lizzie pressed on. Each of us has a responsibility to uplift those who will take our paths in the future. It's not just about pathways built on existing structures, it's about creating new avenues where youth can thrive. I believe in their potential, and I believe that if we provide mentorship that focuses on understanding and empowerment, we're investing in more than a project. We're building a community. As she spoke, images flowed into her mind, kids tentatively stepping into authority, their eyes bright with possibilities that were previously dimmed under the weight of expectation. She was no longer just speaking of a program, her words became smoke signals laced with her own history and vision. Yet, the critical voice wouldn't relent for long. And just what would you do differently? What makes this future mentorship program so vital that we should invest in your vision instead of tried-and-true methods? Another board member countered, arms crossed defiantly. A knot twisted within her, this was the moment to cement her conviction. She drew a deep breath, utilizing the air around her, stoking the fire of her resolve. What makes my approach different is personal experience. I was once a young woman filled with ideas and hesitations, and I know now that real change starts with authentic conversations, not processes that strip away individuality. Mentorship should embolden, not merely guide. That's what I'm fighting for. With every word, the swell of self-assurance rose. The past bruise of defeat began to heal. She wasn't there to replicate a broken system, she was there to reinvent it from her own vacant place of struggle. The atmosphere shifted subtly, yet she could still feel the board's reluctance clinging in the air. Uncertainty loomed, but she recognized this opportunity. No longer a passive participant, she had taken ownership of her narrative, transforming pain into purpose. As the meeting continued, Lizzie noticed the board members leaning in slightly, their expressions starting to soften modestly. In that instant, she understood the power of her story, the impact it could have when coupled with genuine intent. But this wasn't simply about gaining approval or securing funding, it was about establishing her identity, reframing her self-image in the eyes of those who had previously doubted her. Yet as she gathered the courage to engage the board fully, a new challenge flickered into her awareness. What if this wasn't the only confrontation she needed to face? As she began identifying paths for further interviews with key supporters, a gnawing realization pricked at the back of her mind, defining. Her professional worth would not only require surviving this moment but embracing every new challenge that awaited her. With Jack's encouragement echoing in her heart, Lizzie stood at the precipice of change. The discussion offered a newfound sense of adrenaline, yet the voices in her heart were calling on her to dive deeper into her journey. What other fears could she confront, and how would she continue to build upon this momentum? Suddenly, amid the board's responses, she felt the horizon of opportunity expand. Where would it take her next? But even as hope blossomed within her, an unsettling doubt also shadowed her. Had she truly prepared for the battles that lay ahead? As the meeting drew to a close, Lizzie felt the adrenaline of her earlier speech coursing through her, invigorating yet intimidating. The board members' chatter faded into background noise as she processed the implications of her moment in the spotlight. Although some had shown signs of interest, she couldn't shake the feeling of lingering skepticism embedded deeper within that room. Jack approached her, his expression a mix of pride and concern. "That was powerful, Lizzie. But you know this is just the beginning, right?" His words came with an unwelcome reminder. How quickly would their support wane? "I know," she replied, masking the uncertainty in her voice. "But it feels different this time. Don't underestimate the fight ahead. This isn't just a pitch, it's a battle. You'll have to earn their trust every single day." He stepped back, leaving her with an unsettling blend of encouragement and caution. The moment she stepped out of the conference room, reality hit like a cold gale. With each passing day, Lizzie was engulfed by new layers of self-doubt. Had she truly made her case? Was her voice loud enough amid the orchestrated cacophony of power dynamics at play? Houses built on shaky foundations were an invitation for collapse. She felt the weight of that truth pressing against her chest, constricting her breath. Lizzie's thoughts swirled as she navigated the busy corridors, trying to piece together her next strategic moves. The way forward was far from clear. She had to refine her ideas, not just deliver them. She needed allies, voices that could amplify her own and counter the whispers of skepticism. Determination ignited in her. She could start by reaching out to those who had once mentored her. They believed in her, and their experiences might guide her to where she needed to go. But, as each name conjured memories, a chilling realization crept in: could she actually face them? Each encounter would be a reminder of her early career failures, of the moments she'd almost walked away. Rather than retreating, Lizzie resolved to confront these fears head-on. The last thing she'd allow was for her past to dictate her present. She made a mental note to reach out. Each email would be a step taken into the uncomfortable, the unknown. Each invitation for conversation became her armor. Lizzie stumbled into her office, her sanctuary where ideas flourished and despair rarely intruded. With a tap of her keyboard, she began drafting her outreach messages. The more articulate her thoughts became, the more she uncovered insights about herself. Each carefully constructed sentence was a thread weaving her narrative, a testament to the growth she craved. But as she worked late into the night, a flicker of panic surged within her. Her focus was increasingly drawn toward a new fear. What if these mentors echoed the doubts she had just faced? What if they dismissed her entirely? The prospect froze her fingers above the keyboard, staving off the flow of creativity. Lizzie was struck by the realization that she was seeking validation from those she admired. But the verification depended more on her own belief in what she had to offer than on their assessments. The very foundation she hoped to build her program upon, empowerment, had to start with self-empowerment. She closed her laptop, taking deep breaths. This wasn't merely a professional endeavor, it was an arena revitalizing her essence. The act of reaching out was affirming her own worth. With renewed clarity, she pondered the crucial upcoming meetings. This would not just be about her program, it was a litmus test of her evolution. Had she truly shed the insecurities, the self-doubt? Or was she still battling the same ghosts of her past? Acknowledging this internal conflict was part of her transformation. Yet, a part of her balked at the prospect of publicly confronting her vulnerabilities. Was she truly ready to reshape not only her narrative but also the very space in which she existed? The night deepened outside, the quiet city echoing the restlessness in her mind. Lizzie took a final deep breath and glanced at her reflection in the window, contemplating the woman she was becoming. Suddenly, her chest tightened with anticipation. She needed to confront the voices that lingered in her head. With that, she resolved to prepare for whatever dialogue lay ahead, accepting that the uncertainty wouldn't provide easy answers. But she dared to believe she would find her way through the fray, transformed, courageous, forward. As she switched off the office lights, a final question lingered in her thoughts. What would her mentors reveal about the woman she'd grown into, and how would she further decode her identity in their presence? As sunlight filtered through her office window the next morning, Lizzie felt a renewed sense of purpose swell within her. The previous night's turmoil had crystallized into clarity. She would no longer shrink back from her past. Instead, she would capitalize on it. Today might mark a turning point, not just professionally but personally, too. Her first call filled her with apprehension as she dialed the number of her former mentor, Rachel, a figure of strength in her early career. Lizzie could hear her heart racing in the stillness around her, each beep intensifying the nerves fluttering in her stomach. She reflected on the lessons Rachel had imparted. They came rushing back to her, reminders of innate capabilities that had once felt dormant and unheard. Lizzie. Rachel's bright voice crackled through the line, enveloping Lizzie in a wave of nostalgia and comfort. They exchanged pleasantries before Lizzie cautiously broached the subject she had reheated in her mind endlessly. "I'm working on something new," Lizzie began, her voice trembling slightly at the edges. I would value your opinion. It's a program focused on empowerment through practical skills and mentorship. The gravity of asking for guidance weighed heavily, but Rachel's unwavering enthusiasm pushed Lizzie onward. As Rachel responded with insightful feedback, Lizzie felt a rush of confidence, a flicker of a spark reigniting within her. Each idea discussed strengthened her resolve. Rachel believed in her, and acceptance carried a palpable power. It suddenly felt as if the very foundation of her self-doubt was being dismantled piece by piece. Their conversation ended on a hopeful note, but as Lizzie hung up, a chilling aftermath crept in. Would one conversation be enough to alter the course of doubt lodged deep within her? No. This needed to be a pattern, a series of exchanges that would nurture her newfound courage. Over the next few days, Lizzie reached out to others from her past, each interaction reinforcing her belief in her vision. She sought feedback, but more crucially, she sought validation in her experience and perspective. With each mentor, she woven threads of understanding and insight into the fabric of her emerging program, slowly solidifying her identity as both a leader and a developer. Yet, even in moments of elation, shadows lingered. The board meeting loomed ahead, a significant milestone not just for her project but for her as a person. Would she still wrestle with insecurities in front of an audience of critical eyes? Her triumph over self-doubt felt fragile against the impending pressure. The day of the meeting arrived much like a herald of tension, buzzing through the air. Lizzie stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her blazer, the reflection staring back at her, a mix of vulnerability and strength. She rehearsed her speech in silent affirmation. Was she prepared to navigate not just the technicalities of her presentation but the emotional weight that accompanied it? The stakes felt insurmountable, and she vaguely sensed the remnants of panic gearing up to re-emerge. With every word crafted and practiced in her mind, she was torn between the fear of falling prey to doubt and the desire to step into her worthiness. The confrontation with skepticism wouldn't just be external, it would force her to reckon with the echoes of inadequacy that chased her since the beginning. As she walked into the boardroom, the familiar tension laced her body, her heart thudding with uncertainty. The expressions of the board members floated between curiosity and skepticism. Just as she prepared to dive into her presentation, she caught Jack's eye, his gaze steadying and encouraging. "Here goes nothing," she whispered to herself, fully understanding that every stakeholder around the table was not merely judging her ideas, they were observing her growth, too. With resolve, she steadied her breath and started her speech, forcing herself to focus more on expressing her vision rather than merely defending it. What would emerge, she wondered, would be reflections of her journey as she revealed not just a program but the woman who had evolved along the way. What radical assumptions about her worth would she challenge? And in doing so, would she break a cycle of doubt that persisted around her? The moment of truth arrived. Even as her voice trembled at first, she committed fully, knowing change awaited only beyond the horizon of her comfort zone. Lizzie's voice wavered slightly as she projected her ideas into the boardroom, pulsing with urgency. Each word was a step forward, shattering the oppressive cloister of silence that had often stifled her in similar settings. She noticed the board members leaning in, intrigued, a stark contrast to the passive distaste she had feared. This was clarity, not just in her product pitch but in her own shifting self-perception. As she navigated through the data and the emotional anecdotes, Lizzie felt a wave of transformation take hold. Here she was, articulating a vision that had once simmered behind closed doors, powered by the insights and validations from all the mentors she had sought out. Each nod from the board served as a reminder that she was no longer the hesitant woman who had entered the room. The meeting became a stage, and she the actress, existing in the moments of revelation rather than self-doubt. Empowerment isn't just about skills, it's about dismantling the barriers of perception and identity that hold us back, she finished, her cadence now steady and assured. The room fell into a contemplative silence. Lizzie could feel the shift. The air had changed, filled with a sense of possibility rather than skepticism. As she settled back into her seat, the adrenaline surged within her, flipping the script on her apprehension. She had arrived not only as a professional seeking approval but as a woman reclaiming her narrative. The initial feedback from the board was mixed but constructively so, highlighting what resonated and what needed refining. Lizzie welcomed each critique, eager to weave additional insights into her burgeoning project. After the session, Jack approached her, a grin lighting up his face. "You completely changed the narrative in there. I've never seen you so commanding. It's like you were meant to deliver this." His praise ignited a flicker of warmth, the embers of affirmation that she had been gathering now flaring brightly. "Thanks, Jack," she said, feeling the sincerity pulse between them. His encouragement pointed her toward the realization that this was merely the beginning. What if she could use this newfound momentum to challenge not just the expectations of others but her own internal dialogues? But as Lizzie walked back to her office, a shadow of doubt still flickered at the periphery of her thoughts. The meeting had ended well, but could she sustain this momentum? Would overcoming one significant hurdle dissolve the multitude of insecurities swirling underneath? Here lay the crux of her next step: building resilience against the inner critic that threatened to rear its head at any moment. Over the following week, she dedicated herself to both fine-tuning her program and confronting her past. Every late-night reading and exercise in self-reflection became an act of defiance against the doubts that had once held her hostage. She reached out to local communities, seeking partnerships not just as a networking tactic but as a means of forming genuine connections grounded in shared experiences. Each conversation further fueled her purpose, revealing layers of empathy that began guiding her approach to empowerment. Yet, as she immersed herself deeper into this project, she encountered something unexpected: a former colleague who had once been an ally but had now turned critical. Their paths crossed at a networking event, where their exchange quickly soured. Lizzie's heart raced. How could she handle opposition from someone who had previously supported her? The fraying camaraderie forced her to reconsider how she perceived confrontation and challenge. This moment served as an intersection. Was she ready to confront even the voices that were familiar yet hostile? Could she maintain her newfound integrity and assertiveness in the face of such potential toxicity? As she prepared for yet another meeting the next week, Lizzie couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenge lay not just in project execution but in reclaiming her space against those who questioned her direction. Could she transform this into another turning point in her journey? The air felt electric with untapped potential. The time had come to face the new adversities looming on the horizon, not just those from without, but those within. It was time for Lizzie to dig deeper, uncovering not only her strengths but reclaiming her power against adversarial perspectives that had previously unraveled her. The sunlight filtered through her office window, a promise of renewal that felt both invigorating and daunting. Lizzie sat at her desk, the remnants of the previous week's confrontation replaying in her mind like a stubborn echo. The sense of triumph from her successful pitch was wavering, tainted by unease whenever she thought about Jenny, her former ally who had so readily embraced her role as an antagonist. Once, they had shared coffee breaks filled with laughter, and now their brief exchange hung over Lizzie like a specter. Jenny's eyes had sparked with criticism, her words laced with disbelief. "You think you can really make a difference? Your ideas are naive at best." Those words ignited an unexpected fire within Lizzie. How did someone so close to her become a representation of all her fears? Instead of shying away from this toxic voice, she felt a strange urge to dissect it. Could this opposition fuel her transformation? Lizzie's morning routine shifted. She began each day with affirmations that retold her story, challenging her internal narratives rather than succumbing to them. "I am capable. My ideas matter. I possess the ability to change lives." As she recited these lines, she embraced a sense of protection around her ambitions, as if encasing her vision in a gleaming shield. Determined to channel her emotions productively, Lizzie swung open her laptop and dove straight into her project. The latest market analysis needed refining, and input from a diverse team of voices was more crucial than ever. She reached out to specialists, harnessing their experiences to enrich her project's foundation not only for viability but also as a mechanism of richness in her approach to empowerment. Over the next few days, Lizzie's approach began to shift. Rather than avoiding uncomfortable conversations, she leaned into them. She reached out to Jenny once more, despite her trepidation. "Can we talk? I think there's value in us discussing our perspectives." The request felt bold, yet deep down, Lizzie recognized that this was necessary not only for her project but for her personal growth. The meeting was set for later that week. The anxious anticipation sat heavily in her stomach, yet she resolved to approach the encounter not as a defeated friend but as an equal. It struck her that the real power lay in vulnerability, allowing her to express her vision while being open to criticism without it extinguishing her drive. But Jenny was not the only challenge lurking on the horizon. As Lizzie prepared for the meeting, she faced mounting pressure from upper management who were skeptical about her strategies. Each call from her superior felt weighted, a reminder that despite her recent accomplishments, the journey was far from guaranteed. How could she assure them of her direction while remaining true to her principles? Lizzie scheduled time to practice her responses, rehearsing both for Jenny and her bosses. She reminded herself of the passion that burned behind her project, grounding herself in the core reasons she believed in her approach. Just as she finalized her notes, her phone buzzed. It was Jack, his recent text uncharacteristically terse. "We need to talk." "It's about Jenny." A wave of dread washed over her. What now? She felt a familiar knot forming in her chest. What revelation did Jack bring? Was there more to Jenny's critique than Lizzie had realized? The air was thick with tension, wrapping around her like a vine, squeezing tightly, but Lizzie recognized this as part of her evolution. Whatever awaited her, she wasn't running from it. The resilience she had forged over the past weeks was now her armor, and she was ready to face whatever came next. The time had come to confront her allies and adversaries alike. In doing so, could she find a deeper understanding of her mission and herself? This was a threshold moment, one that might redefine her journey. Lizzie paced the floor of her office, her mind racing with possibilities after Jack's text. The wait felt endless, time stretching as uncertainty dragged at her. Jack had been an ally, someone who understood the intricacies of their workplace dynamics, so if he wanted to talk about Jenny, it couldn't be trivial. What did Jack know that she didn't? Taking a deep breath, Lizzie tried to focus on her prep for the upcoming meetings. However, her thoughts kept circling back to her own motivations and the confrontation with Jenny. What if it wasn't just about project strategies? What if it had deeper implications about their values and beliefs in the workplace? Later that day, Lizzie met Jack in a small, less frequented conference room, the kind of place where private conversations flourished among the humdrum of office life. Jack looked serious, his brow furrowed, adding to her apprehension as he gestured for her to sit. "Lizzie, I'm glad we could talk," he began, his voice low and careful. "There's something I need to share about Jenny. It might explain a bit more about her skepticism." The words hung in the air, charged with tension. Lizzie willed herself to listen, her heart pounding. "Go on," she urged, feeling the weight of impending revelations pressing against her. "Jenny's been feeling sidelined. Ever since your pitch success, she's questioned her role here. There's this fear that she might not be seen as valuable anymore," Jack explained, his tone empathetic yet probing. "I think that's influencing her perspective." A mix of frustration and sorrow welled up within Lizzie. It was difficult to reconcile her initial feelings of betrayal with this newfound understanding. Jenny's downplaying of her ambition now seemed more a reflection of her insecurities than of Lizzie's abilities. What should I do then? Should I even bother talking to her? Lizzie asked, the doubts bubbling back to the surface. Despite her progress, doubt still lingered like an ever-present shadow. Jack leaned forward, his eyes steady. "I think you can't ignore her. Engage with her. Not just for the project, but as a teammate. It might help rebuild that connection." The advice resonated, reigniting that spark she felt at the start of her journey. Immediately, Lizzie began doubting if she had really tried to understand where Jenny was coming from. Fear of criticism had clouded her vision. Jack's voice pulled her back. You've built yourself up these past weeks, Lizzie. This could be an opportunity for you to solidify that growth. Show empathy. It doesn't mean you are weak. It shows strength. Strength, an idea that felt foreign yet so necessary. Could she confront not only Jenny's criticisms but her own insecurities simultaneously? Lizzie's mind whirled as fresh resolve took root. In the days leading to her meeting with Jenny, her affirmations gained weight. I can foster a collaborative environment. I can create a space for openness. Each morning, she focused on the idea of leading with empathy and sharing her journey rather than competing for validation. As she embraced this perspective, Lizzie recognized it wouldn't just redefine her connection with Jenny but with herself. The day of the meeting arrived, and Lizzie stepped into the conference room with a purposeful determination. Jenny was already seated, her expression unreadable. Lizzie chose to allow vulnerability to guide her as she sat across from her former friend. Jenny, I reached out because I think we can learn from one another, Lizzie began, feeling the tension begin to ebb. I want to understand where you're coming from. I value your experience. As she spoke, she began to unravel her own complexities, her motivations transparent in the air between them. Would this honest exchange bring healing to their fractured relationship or merely intensify the conflict? The echo of uncertainty faded for a moment, replaced by the anticipation of potential understanding and cohesion. Just then, the door swung open, and their manager entered unexpectedly, a stern look on his face. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I need to discuss some changes to the project. What could this mean for their plans? Could they navigate this disruption together? Lizzie felt a rush of anxiety wash over her as she braced for the unknown. How would this unexpected twist affect not only her approach to Jenny but the future of her project? Lizzie's heart raced as she recognized the tension saturating the air. Their manager's abrupt entrance pulled her abruptly from her internal dialogue, redirecting the focus from the complex landscape of her feelings toward Jenny to the looming uncertainty regarding the project. The words changes and discussion hung heavy, and Lizzie's mind flickered with worst-case scenarios. Jack's words echoed in her mind, urging her not to lose sight of her growth. She had come so far, grappling with her insecurities and striving to cultivate an environment of understanding. Yet here she was, threatened by an unanticipated shift in direction. She quickly reminded herself that adapting to changes was part of professional maturity. Of course, Lizzie replied, her tone steadier than she felt. She shot a sideways glance at Jenny, gauging her reaction. Would this be an opportunity for collaboration or a catalyst for further division? Their manager, Mr. Hale, took a breath, leaning against the door frame. I've been thinking about the project we're currently working on. I believe we need to rethink our strategy for the next phase. There's been feedback from higher-ups and we need to pivot. Lizzie's mind buzzed. Feedback from who? Higher-ups who barely understood the nuances she and her team faced. Still, she had come to appreciate constructive challenges. What specific changes are you suggesting? She asked, meeting Mr. Hale's gaze with determination. There was a flicker of surprise in his eyes, but he soldiered on. We're shifting to a more collaborative model. I believe bringing more voices into the mix will lead to a stronger outcome. I'd like to incorporate ideas from other departments, so we'll need your input on that. Before she could process the implications of what this meant for her, Lizzie felt her confidence take a hit. More voices? She thought, taking a moment to reevaluate. What did that mean for her hard-fought position? Jenny shifted in her chair, a subtle sign of effort to engage amidst the turmoil. That makes sense, she said, her tone cautious yet thoughtful. I think we can leverage our unique strengths to integrate fresh perspectives. Just as Lizzie regained some footing, her heart sank. If the project was opening up for collaboration, could she still maintain her vision? The stakes felt higher than ever, and panic threatened to cloud her clarity. Let me put it this way, Mr. Hale continued, sensing the uncertainty. Your success has set a precedent. I'm counting on the both of you to guide your team through this transition, turning potential chaos into opportunity. The mention of their previous success reignited the spark within her. She remembered the late nights, the collective struggles, and the breakthrough moments. Lizzie locked eyes with Jenny, who appeared to be wrestling with her own shifting emotions. If they harnessed their unresolved tensions and expectations, they could lead the team toward a new collaborative spirit. I'm up for the challenge, if you are, Jenny, Lizzie said, her resolve hardening. Let's use this as an opportunity to build something greater. Together. The slight nod from Jenny felt like a crack in the wall that had separated them, a tentative truce that Lizzie was eager to solidify. Good, Mr. Hale replied, a flicker of approval in his expression. Then let us set up a meeting next week with the other departments. I want to see this collaborative strategy in action. As he left the room, Lizzie felt a mix of trepidation and exhilaration. The path ahead was unfamiliar but could lead to growth in directions she hadn't anticipated. She turned to Jenny, feeling a newfound kinship in navigating the unknown. Tomorrow, let us brainstorm some ideas before we dive into meeting with the other departments. It'd be smart to be prepared, Lizzie suggested, eager to build on the fragile truce. Absolutely, Jenny responded, her tone warming. Let us make sure our voices are heard. But as they began to collaborate on their strategy, the drone of an email notification interrupted a message from HR alerting her of a mandatory meeting regarding project development's post-pivot. The word serious performance evaluation stood out, leaving an unsettling knot in Lizzie's stomach. What could this meeting reveal about her position and her battle for recognition? Would she truly face another challenge to her confidence, or would this lead to unforeseen opportunities that could transform her future? The stakes felt impossibly high, and Lizzie's determination surged as she prepared to confront the unknown once more. Lizzie felt the weight of expectation pressing heavily as she entered the HR meeting room. Her heart raced, but she quickly reminded herself of the growth she had achieved. No longer that hesitant intern startled by the grandeur of corporate life, she had transformed into a capable leader, ready to embrace her ambitions. As her colleagues gathered, Lizzie's awareness sharpened. She noticed their tired eyes, the anxious shifting on their seats. These shared grim expressions gave her the confidence to take the space she had fought so hard to reclaim. She remembered Jack's encouragement to embrace vulnerability and found strength in their collective uncertainties. Mr. Hale initiated the meeting, outlining the directive for new project evaluations, creating an atmosphere pregnant with speculation. Lizzie's mind raced ahead, processing scenarios as he delved into the specifics. Would they judge her performance solely on past metrics or recognize her transformative impact? Lizzie, Mr. Hale called, directing his gaze towards her. Can you share how you see the mentorship program evolving with the new collaborative strategy? The moment was electric, all eyes turned toward Lizzie. Instead of shying away, she took a deep breath, her voice emerging strong. I view this change not as a challenge, but as an opportunity to diversify our approach. Mentorship thrives on varied perspectives. With every word, she spoke not only from her newfound confidence but from her passion for the project. We've already begun building connections with community members, and integrating their unique experiences will further enhance our program, she continued. Real empowerment comes from collaboration, and I believe we can significantly elevate our impact by integrating voices from across departments. Nods and approving murmurs crisscrossed the room as Lizzie felt support begin to swell around her. She glanced at Jenny, who smiled with encouragement, solidifying the connection they had begun rebuilding. The discussion flowed, punctuated with thoughtful insights and suggestions, and Lizzie felt something shift within her, a true sense of belonging. For the first time, she was not merely trying to impress but genuinely contributing to a vision she believed in profoundly. As the meeting came to a close, Lizzie caught Mr. Hale's eye again. Thank you for your contributions, everyone. I want to commend Lizzie for her proactive approach. She almost couldn't believe her ears. Recognition, transformative acknowledgement was settling into place. Days passed, and the energy from the HR meeting painted her current projects with momentum. Lizzie spent late nights drafting new frameworks that encouraged mentorship and collaboration, fully engaging with her colleagues. One afternoon, Jack stopped by her office, admiration radiating from his gaze. "You've really taken charge, Lizzie. The team is buzzing about your ideas. It's incredible to see this momentum." Lizzie absorbed his praise like sunlight. A sense of accomplishment surging within. She realized that each moment of hesitation had fortified her resolve, a lesson learned from the challenges she had faced. No longer did she feel the shadows of self-doubt, she had emerged into solid confidence. As the weeks progressed, Lizzie arranged and led workshops, integrated feedback into her programs, and championed the voices that had once been silenced. The initiative gained traction, and soon, they celebrated their first success, a community event where local youth were engaged and inspired by their mentorship framework. Yet, one final test awaited, fast approaching. Lizzie couldn't shake the nerves before the final board presentation where they would evaluate the progress of their new methodology. Would they embrace her initiative as a success? Would her transformative leadership be acknowledged? The morning of the presentation, she dressed deliberately, a blazer symbolizing a battle armor fertile with her journey's essence. In her mind, she recited affirmations, brimming with the conviction she had painstakingly cultivated: I am worthy. I am capable. I am ready. As Lizzie presented, she saw the shift occurring around the boardroom table. They leaned in, genuine curiosity flickered in their eyes as she articulated the metrics of success, feedback from community participants, and the tangible impacts she had witnessed. Empowerment isn't solely about imparting skills, she concluded passionately, it's about building a legacy of belief in every individual's potential, fostering dreams, and demolishing barriers. This is not just a program, it's a movement. In that moment, she stood not as an intern fitting into their world but as the leader she had fought to become. The applause that followed wasn't merely recognition of her program, it signified the culmination of her journey. Each clap resonated with validation, echoing her transformation from a timid intern to a competent professional. Afterwards, Mr. Hale approached with a smile. "Lizzie, you've shown remarkable growth and leadership. We're looking to not just implement this program but also expand it. You've proven you can lead. How do you feel about taking a more senior role?" Joyful disbelief soared within her. This was the affirmation of her hard-won wisdom, the culmination of her efforts that stretched far beyond petty critiques. "Yes. Absolutely," she replied, the words tumbling forth like a release of years-long pent-up aspirations. Looking back, she saw the contrasts, her past doubt juxtaposed with the solidity of her newfound confidence. Each step had been decisive, every challenge had been a catalyst for growth. Finally, she felt whole. In this transformation, Lizzie secured not just a role but a legacy, building a world where mentorship wasn't just theory, but a lifeline that bridged gaps, nourished dreams, and inspired countless lives. Now, it is your turn to foster your journey of growth. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, every click helps. Comment your reactions and theories about Lizzie's incredible journey. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. You need to support the channel, don't wait even one more second.